background, in a commercial background, I had to adjust and, learn the jargon for psychology, understand humanities, understand all of that, and having to write 100 assignments, which I never used to do in my past life and in my past qualifications. So knowing exactly what's needed, planning your time, learning how to say no, and remembering that you the resource. So one thing I was told when I started my master's journey is that you are the resource, especially in psychology, you take on so much. You listen to people's problems, you try to solve people's problems, you take on so much. So you are the resource. Self-care is very, very important. So if you're going to see a therapist, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. You could just be going there because you're experiencing a burnout, which is normal in the university environment, which is normal in a higher education environment. People experience burnout a lot. So knowing when to monitor those symptoms when they come and asking for help. So one thing that also is underestimated in the university environment, which I quickly learned about, was having a mentor. And it doesn't mean having a mentor in the profession you've chosen or in the studies you've chosen. You can choose somebody else. And for people that are in the townships and rural areas, sometimes a church is a great resource whereby you can find a lot of people. And coming from townships, that's where most people actually experience their first sessions of counseling, with pastors, with elders at church, and having mentors in such spaces, having a mentor who's a teacher, having a mentor who's somebody working as a professional that can prepare you for the professional environment. So that was very, very, very important for me. So I think in short, I can also, in closing, I can say that it's a journey, knowing that it's not easy as well. You look at people that pursue PhDs, you look at people that do multiple masters, you look at people that do different things, and you're motivated from that, So even having people that you idolize, and now we have the benefit of social media, you can even talk to people that you idolize, people that you never had access to. So that's very, very important as well. So, but I can say those are some of the things that have worked for me, and also knowing the difference between being a high achiever and being a perfectionist. So in the psychological world, being a perfectionist come with negative consequences, because then if you want to be perfect all the time, what happens when whatever you thought is important is not happening? Learning to manage and handle the disappointment. People that are perfectionists, sometimes they struggle with that, and they obsess and they develop symptoms of obsessive compulsive, which is very, very important, because being a high achiever says, okay, I set my aims high, but you're able to accept when things don't go your way, But if you're a perfectionist, it's hard sometimes to even accept failing, because if you fail, you obsess over that, you obsess over that, then you feel that you're not good enough. And most tertiary students struggle with this, especially students that used to perform high and they get to university and they fail. Coming from institutions like your Wits, your UJ, your UCT, you have a lot of dropouts in first year, and you have a lot of students that change courses because they struggle to accept and deal with failure when it happened for the first time. And some of them are experiencing it for the first time, so they don't even know how to respond to it. So it's very, very important that we prepare people for such. And as Lucy said earlier, and as Keleigh said, that there are resources. And as Sunday said, you have resources within universities that help people with psychology, that help people with counseling, that help people with therapy as well. So students need to learn to use such platforms. And you have platforms like your SADC that do a lot of great work. So even sitting at home, you can pick up your phone and call and find a counselor on the other side. There are many other places which offer counseling services as well. So yeah, that's been my journey in short, and some of the things that I have
Thank you so
used
much.
to get me to where I am.
Thank you so much. That was profound, guys. It's important to scream out and say, I need help, and prioritize having a mentor. You've mentioned a lot of important things, and this is recorded, so it's going to be available all over social media platforms. If you want a recording, you can just email us at info@imfundoenhle.co.za. We'll send you the copy. So guys, we are opening for discussion now. If you have a question, there's something that is burning and you want to find out from Sunday, Kels and Thabo, this is the perfect moment. I'm always excited when we hear from the audience or the attendees. It's amazing. They have great questions to ask you guys. So Lindelwa will be taking over, facilitating that part. Over to you, Lindelwa. Or if you don't want to talk, you can just write it down in the chat box. I see people have been writing things. We have 56 chats. That's amazing. Thank you. Over to you, Lindelwa.
Thank you so much, Lucy, and thank you to everyone, to our speakers. I have learned a lot, trust me, and I know a lot of people who are here in this webinar have also learned a lot of things. So guys, in terms of, if you have a question, as Lucy had said, just please raise your hand and then we'll give you the opportunity to speak. Or if you are shy and you prefer just writing on the group chat, that is also okay. We will be checking the group chat. I've also written some questions as our panel was talking, so I will also give you guys a few questions, but we already have a hand up, so I think we should give him an opportunity to speak and we will continue from there. So can Progressive, I'll just read your first name, please. Progressive, his hand is up. Can you please share your question with our panel?
Good evening, everyone on this call. Wow, this has been a very, very beautiful, informative webinar. Thank you so much to the speakers that have come to educate us. You know, if you are not in the field that they're in, you will not understand certain things and certain behaviors. Not knowing that a certain individual is going through, you know, stress or depression, and you will judge them and you will, you know, push them away, not knowing that that individual is crying for help. One thing that I've noticed, especially within the Black culture, there is that notion that you are still young. How can you have stress, you know? And many young people have dived into depression and, you know, suicide because of the elders could not notice that this individual is crying for help. My question is, how can we educate the previous generation, you know, our predecessors, on such issues? You know, that there is something called stress, there is something called anxiety. Sandy spoke about, you know, coming from a rural area. There are so many old women and old men that are taking care of teenagers in rural areas. You get what I'm saying? And many of these teenagers, their parents are not with them. They're going through stress, they're going through depression, and the elders don't know how to deal with it. So how can we educate them? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Progressive. That is a very valid question. And I'm not sure, Lucy, if I should give each person or should I just allow our panel to answer freely?
Yeah, I think every panel want to answer something, you can just indicate so that we don't force questions on you guys. I want this to be, you know, that good space that, no, I don't want to say anything here, like that.
Yes. So from our panel members, if there's a question that you would like to answer, can you just also raise your hand so that we can, you know, give notice to you? But Progressive has asked a question of how can we educate people, you know, about this mental health issues, and how do we educate people to feel free, you know, and cry out and say, hey guys, I need help, please help. So can we have people from our panel who can answer the question? Thank you, Thabo. Thank you, Thabo. Please take over.
Thanks, Lindelwa. And I think one thing about mental health, especially in a community like South Africa, is that there's still a stigma. you know, to mental health, especially if you, even in your modernized societies, even in your suburban societies, even in your middle age, and middle class, and also rich people, there's still a stigma. It doesn't mean that it only exists in your illiterate or maybe rural people. So, but one thing that I love now is that if you watch TV and if you follow social media, there are many platforms now, especially in TV programs. There are TV programs that are dedicated to that. If you follow social media, there's that level of talking about mental health and explaining what it is, because there's still a lot that we don't understand. And like Progressive said that, you know what, people are committing to suicide, or a 10-year-old is maybe aggressive and a 10-year-old is just fighting and bullying people. But when you take him to therapy, you actually discover that, oh, this child, something is not right at home. Mommy and daddy or mommy and uncle are always fighting, or maybe this child was abused. So I think it's also for people to pay attention and know themselves and know when something is changing. And when you know yourself, what we call insight in psychology is that you'll know when things are changing. You know that now I have low energy. I'm not eating as I used to eat, or I'm overeating. I'm not exercising. I have low motivation. I'm not motivated to do anything. You prefer maybe sleeping or anything. So it's educating people around those symptoms, and also for platforms that are available to spread the message, you know. So, but I think things are slowly changing in South Africa. We are talking about these topics. Webinars like this, they're very, very important to say that, you know what, let's understand what's happening here. This child is not just naughty, you know, there's something happening to this child. This child is not just rebellious, there's something happening. This adult, why is this person drinking so much? You know, why is this person sleeping around? You know, it could be a way they communicating that I'm not okay, you know. But for people that are out there, especially for us, people like us and people that have some level of education and exposure, it's important for them to sit those people and their parents and their grannies down to say, hey, granny, this is what's happening. Let's watch the story. Or this is depression, you know, these are the symptoms of depression. So if you see me maybe sometimes going through this, just know that this is happening. But we need to learn and we need to encourage people to speak out. And for me, that's very, very important, because people don't speak out. And normally when we're experiencing stress or anxiety or depression, we don't speak out. We retreat and we prefer being alone. And that's where then your symptoms, they progress and they become maybe severe. So we need to learn, but I'm glad that there are many platforms now. I'm glad for places like SADC, and I'm glad for other ones that are educating people like about mental health. And mostly in rural areas, we have teachers, we have even social workers, and some nurses, they've done psychiatry, you have psychiatric nurses, so they are able to educate people outside psychology. Unfortunately, with psychology is that we have a very, very limited number of psychology in South Africa, and there's an issue of access as well, because majority of them are in private practice, and if you have to see them, they're very, very expensive most of the time, and most people don't even have money. So, but there are other resources that are able to educate people about mental health.
Wow, thank you so much, Thabo, on elaborating on that. And thank you so much for touching on the symptoms, because, you know, sometimes you experience depression or anxiety and you cannot associate it with mental health. So it's very important to understand the symptoms of mental health so that you can get the proper help for that. So I see that we have some of our panel members having their hands up. Can I give you guys just a few minutes to please voice out what you need to voice out?
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you to Thabo for kind of setting the grounds of how do we speak to elders? How do we speak to people that don't understand what mental health is, people that hold that stigma? How do we have engaging conversations like that that would be meaningful? And the first thing that I have found impactful is to empathize with that person. They never grew up in the context that you did, possibly. They are not aware of what mental health is. They might not even understand the words such as depression. And so one of the things that I always do is, using language in which helps those kinds of people understand where you're at, and saying, like, I feel really hopeless. And instead of trying to educate them in a sense that it comes across as judgmental, but rather opening a space for conversation is possibly going to have a better outcome. And there's a difference between distress and eustress. So when we are in distress, it affects us. We are socially impaired, or we are clinically impaired. We can't cope, we can't function. And eustress is something that drives us. So stress is not always a bad thing. So yes, creating a space in which conversations can be had and saying, sad, or you felt lost, because we can all relate to that. Making ourselves relatable is probably one of the most powerful things that we can do. And I'll hand over to Sunday to just continue with what her thoughts are.
So guys, I'm gonna take a very different stance. So for me, the way I'm looking at mental health, I'm looking at it from a decolonial perspective. So thank you for Progressive for raising that question, because I did my research, my master's research with elders. It's titled Narrative Accounts of Mental Illness by Older Villagers in Limpopo. And I aim to refute, studies and statements that African people are mentally illiterate about mental health issues. I say that, maybe they are refused to listen to your narratives about mental health because you refuse to hear theirs, right? In your own language, it's called depression, it's called schizophrenia. In their own language, it's called madness, demon possession. And we're not ready to hear those narratives. We're not ready to integrate them in the current Western understandings of mental illness, right? And even if you look here at the attendance, who are we? We are the educated, literate. Where are the elders? They're at home. They're not here in the conversation. So I think my research taught me something, that there's no definite truth, there's no definite model of mental health or mental illness. There are so many knowledges about mental illness or mental health. Firstly, in a rural area whereby there's no access to psychologists, to mental health practitioners, who do they go to? To traditional healers, to religious leaders, right? And they're not saying, and one of the things I found interesting that I thought that they would say that it's witchcraft, it's not depression or whatnot. They told us that, they told me that, Sunday, stress does lead to mental illness, So I feel like for so long, narratives of African people about mental illness or mental health have been so silenced, So we carry this narrative that we don't know, right? And we should differentiate and shift from we don't know to like we don't have access, to psychologists or mental health in general. Because honestly speaking, as Sunday, I come from a rural area. Even if you see psychologists in South Africa, we go to private practice. We cry that, our people need access to mental health. Who needs access to mental health? Those rural people who are poor, under-resourced, they are the one, they need mental health support. But we go to the elite, the middle class, the upper class, they stay there, in the marginals, and they stay silenced. So I feel for me, I'm not saying that they don't know. I'm not saying that we need to educate them. If we allow ourselves to be educated by them about how they heal and understand mental health issues, right? Maybe they might not say, Sunday, this is a mental illness. Maybe it might be a fancy concept to them, you know, but let's hear, what do they call it? What is it? What is it in their own language, in their community, you know? And then elders, I found that they provide mental health support to the people who are facing issues in their communities. You know, pastors, you know, are there providing that counseling and support. But because we are psychologists or whatever, mental psychiatrists and everything, we like pathologizing pastors. Pastors are now saying, okay, you're gonna say this about me, I'm gonna say that about you, that I'm not gonna listen to you. So it's just resistance what we see today. And I wish that next time a psychologist or any social science, any social science academic goes into these communities, listen to their narratives, you know, be a listener, right? Be a learner, right? And I think that's the most powerful tool, you know. And one thing as a therapist, the one thing I've learned that if I'm curious about my client, I allow a space whereby they can share their experiences with me without feeling like they are judged, without feeling like they're kind of directed in a certain way. And then me, I don't say that, you know, traditional or religious narrative for mental illness are definite. I'm saying that we need an integration, you know. So I refuse to accept Western also models of mental illness as definite as well. And I'm like, until in Africa, African people are understood in their context, in their historical, social, cultural, and religious context, we still far, you know, from achieving kind of an understanding where people and where psychologists or mental health practitioners and the people of the land can actually come together and address these issues. Because remember, these models, even me as a psychologist, I know that these theories, these models, these terms that I use, this construct, I derive from European countries. And then I think that's why I'm so interested in doing social cultural and context relevant research in South Africa pertaining mental health issues and mental illness. And particularly because now today we're talking about students, I say listen to those students. Listen to those students about how they narrate their experiences, you know, of feeling sad, of being angry, you know, and then you will try to shift, you know, from being the teacher, but also being the learner. And I think that's the most powerful tool you can do. So let's recreate narratives about African people and about how they understand mental illness.
Wow, 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 guys. I am loving and I'm enjoying this discussion. Thank you so much, Sunday. You know, you've turned Friday into a Sunday. You are so passionate and I can just listen to you go on and on and on. So we truly appreciate that. And thank you so much for touching on that in most instances, we believe that rural areas are uneducated and they do not know nothing, which is not true, at all. You know, we see that in so many faculties and departments, even myself in science. We always believe that like people in the rural areas are uneducated, but when you sit down and you actually hold a conversation with them, you realize that they know so much. It's just that they know it in their own, you know, context and according to their own environment and in the space that they live in. So thank you so much, Sunday, for that, and thank you so much to our other panel members for their views. So guys, so we are here. We are talking about mental health. What I want to know, or what I hope our listeners are thinking, is that what causes mental health? You know, we've spoken about the symptoms, but what causes mental health? You know, in the context of our topic being around higher education, we know that we are dealing with students. So we are dealing with issues such as funding, academic performance, supervisor-student relationships. So can our panel just please unpack on that in the context of higher education? what causes mental health? And can each panel member just briefly, 1 minute, so that we can also go down the list of the questions. We also have questions coming up in the chat that I will read after here.
All right, it's fine. I'll go first quickly. One thing that I want people to be aware of is that we have what we call psychosocial stresses, So either you getting your mental health problems can develop from your social circumstances. Some people are at risk of developing mental health issues because of biological reasons, because in your family, there's a history of maybe schizophrenia, or there's a history of depression. So there is that biological component to it. There is the psychosocial stresses that can contribute to you having mental health issues. So it's one thing in psychology that we look for, even in social work that we look for. So it's not just attributed to you now being in university, you now experiencing stress or pressure or everything. So it's important to know even your family background, to know even your family medical background. And one thing that also contributes to this, it's the trauma that we experienced as children. So psychology and social work and that field always goes back to you being a child. What happened there? Were you exposed to stress? Did you lose people early in your life? What were your developmental, did you reach your milestones normally or not? Those are some of the things that we look at, because I don't want people to focus only on, I'm at university now, I have a boyfriend, the boyfriend dumped me, so I have depression, So there are so many things that contribute to you finally having a mental health problem. So when we look at it holistically. So my panelists will touch on others as well. So it's something that I want to bring to people, that there are other factors that contribute to you being susceptible to developing a mental health problem.
Thank you, Thabo.
Thank you so much, Thabo. Oh, yes, please do.
Perfect. So just some of the other things not to speak about, the things that Thabo has touched on, just to add. Some of the things that we need to be aware of is in the university space is, number one, the financial restraint that so many people go through. You're setting yourself up, and this requires sacrifice. And therefore, you don't have time often to have a full-time job, and even having part-time work is an added pressure. So let's be aware and be mindful and be kinder to yourself in those hard times where everybody else seems like they are so much further ahead of you, but you're putting in the groundwork and you're really putting down those deep roots that are going to set you up, and that puts strain on your mental health. In the midst of COVID-19, we've had isolation, loneliness, lack of resources, seeing the smallest things like people smile with masks. That's not possible anymore. And having those small conversations before class are now lost. And so it's so important for us to be aware of all these small factors, that if you're sitting listening to this and you're thinking, I feel so hopeless, or I feel so tired and exhausted, or I feel, like I don't want to do this anymore, this studying thing. Just remember that there's so many different factors that have caused you to feel this way, and it's okay. It's okay that you feel this way, and you aren't alone. Many, if not all, students can relate to at least one of the things that I've said. And so as we've spoken about in the beginning of this, it's so important to touch on the coping mechanisms of self-care and the resources in order not to feel so alone. Thank you. I'll hand over to Sunday.
I think that they have said so much, and given the psychosocial model of causes of mental illness. So I'll just shift a little bit and say that while there are predisposing factors to mental illness, but we need to acknowledge and commend, the protective factors that the students come with, resilience, great support system, and also just their innate ability to just like tolerate stresses. I think it's very important. But just looking at the biological, the genetics, the medical history of like family members, and the psychological causes, you can look at childhood trauma. We know how your childhood experience counts so much, or in the development of mental health issues that you face. It's in very rare occasions where you hear a client not refer to like, when I was a child Sunday, this happened and happened. They always go there. So we look at those psychological stuff, and social and environmental stuff. We look at, the financial constraints, poverty, and other things that may be contextual, like the pandemic at the current state. And so these things don't exist in isolation. They are really they really relate on each other. And I think that is very important to take that into consideration.
Okay, thank you so much to our panel. I will just read a couple of questions here on the chat. I am just scrolling up to find one. There was one question that said that, what would you say to someone who says, I don't like talking about my feelings? So what would you say to someone who says, I don't like talking about my feelings, someone who bottles up emotions? Over to you guys.
All right, I'll respond to that. We just need to, especially people around us, we need to understand them and how they respond to situations. Especially people that experience stress, we respond differently. And there was a comment earlier about sometimes encouraging somebody to maintain a journal, and now there are places where you can even write, somebody, if you maybe encounter such a person and they say they don't want to speak, you can sometimes encourage them to call places like SADC, or maybe at university, most universities have a counseling unit, and the service is free. Sometimes it's not a matter of even talking to you. There's an element of being afraid to be judged, especially if we know each other personally, because if I come to you now and say, hey, I've been thinking about suicide, people are going to look at you and say, how? But you're here in university, you got a nice privilege, probably you have a bursary, and all your parents are working hard to keep you in university. So sometimes a person is afraid of being judged. So they're more not maybe thinking about their own discomfort in talking about their feelings, but they're thinking about already anticipating your reaction to that, or maybe you've said some comments in the past about people that are anxious, they're weak, or people that are depressed, they are weak, so they already know how you respond to certain situations. So there are other platforms where a person is able to communicate, and we use that in psychology, that a person sometimes can write, can keep a journal, somebody can keep a diary. With child, one skill we use in children therapy is that with the play therapy, people are able to communicate through other means. So it's not just only writing. So there are places where we can encourage people to communicate, and they can communicate differently, And just especially for tertiary, just be aware and know your friends around you, and be aware also of how you talk to your friends, and remember that people are different. If you can tolerate certain things, like Sunday spoke about resilience, that I was dumped and I moved on after a week, it doesn't mean that your friend will be able to move on after a week. So appreciating difference also in people, it's very, very important. And if you are a friend, or if you are a mentor, or if you are a classmate, respect how people react to stressors. It can be psychosocial stressors. Respect how they respond to them, and appreciate that it's not going to be the way you respond to that.
Thank you so much, Thabo. Oh, okay. We have questions. Okay, can
Lindelwa,
Francis?
Sunday. Oh, okay. I think you can take the panel, then you can take the attendees.
Okay, sure.
Okay, it'll be nice
Sunday,
to hear from
please,
Francis.
can you?
I just want to say that, obviously, just like in an personal interaction, it's gonna be different. But I'll just speak from, a therapeutic perspective. And obviously we use different modalities, but I think that's where the work is. As a therapist, that's where, you need, to be quite ready. Those times are very difficult, I tell you. Who don't just bring things to you to work with. They're like, I don't want to talk and everything like that. And I think that, just to echo what Thabo said, is that, you sit with it, you tolerate with that resistance that I don't want to talk, and understand that this is not on the concrete level. It's just like, I don't want to talk. But obviously, this can be related to many things. You find clients, who growing up, when they express themselves, they're told that you talk too much, right? You're not supposed to be sad. Why are you crying? Why you sad? Pick yourself up and stuff like that. And what Thabo said about it being hard to be in a position where you have to talk, where you have to talk about your feelings, just reflecting that to a person is very powerful. Just saying that I understand is very hard. It's very hard to talk about these feelings, for someone who has not being in a place where they can express themselves fully. So I just want to say that on a therapeutic level, but on a personal level, just being empathetic, just carrying that and tolerating and respecting those boundaries that I don't want to talk. And it's fine. And maybe making, suggesting that maybe you can use a journal and stuff like that. So I just wanted to answer that it's very important to respect that. As a person, because talking about feelings, as we all know, is very hard. It's a very personal and sensitive issue for anyone, especially to just open up to someone that you're not used to, or even people that you're used to. That's very personal. That's something that you carry, and people don't just share it with everyone.
Thank you so much, Sunday. Can we please take our last panel member, and then we will start with another round of questions.
Yes, I just want to add something very short and sweet, because I think that Sunday and Thabo have really answered the question beautifully. But sometimes holding space and sometimes silence therapeutic. Sometimes even not allowing that space. Readiness is so important. If someone is not feeling ready or comfortable, it's okay. And it's okay to just sit in that. There's something very powerful in that. And, Sunday emphasized something beautiful about just listening. And sometimes it's about listening to what they have to say, even in non-verbal ways, because people speak a lot, and not only with their voice. So I'll leave it there, and let's move on to the next question.
Thank you so much to our panel. We can take another round of questions. I have been notified that Katlekgo's hand was first. So can we please have Katlekgo, and then you will have Francis. Over to you, Katlekgo.
Good evening, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, Katlekgo, you are.
Oh, I just wanted to ask, like, I thought about this question earlier on, and this is to Sunday. Am I still audible? Because my network is a bit weak.
We can hear you, Katlekgo, don't worry. We'll notify you when we can't hear anything. Keleigh.
Oh, okay. My question to Sunday, it wasn't actually a question.
Okay, Keleigh, can we please come back to you after Francis? Maybe your network will pick up again. So can we please give Francis a chance? Then we'll return back to Keleigh. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Question, but I just want to tell you something about my experience.
Okay.
My name is Francois, and firstly, I want to say sorry because I'm not very well in English. I'm a French speaker, so I'm from Congo, and I have been here only 2 years, and my first word in English, I learned it here. So I'm sorry first for my English. About mental health issues is very, this topic is very sensitive, mostly in Africa, because like the country where I'm coming from, when I reach here, I found that at least South Africa is advantage in that way of mental health. Because in my country, like the time I was doing my training, my internship, at the place where I was doing internship, you could find really people don't come to consult. The only way you can find psychologist or wellness or counselor, you must find them on the NGO. But like private space where they are working, you can't find anyone. I just found it here. So it's very important, like in our culture in Africa, I could suggest that maybe one day they could think about how to teach Africa psychology. Because what I found is when they found like symptoms of depression, anxiety, or something like that, people don't consult in my country. I'm talking about my country. Where they go, firstly, they go to church, consult pastors to pray for them. They think something is maybe witchcraft, demons, or something like that. So I think that it is very important for us to teach maybe people who coming after us, to teach people about mental health first in our context, Africa context, because what we learn at university mostly is about European history, psychology. If you see, even if you see most of psychologists, what we learn at university, most of them as from West. So from experience, because my topic, my academic topic was about epilepsy. I was working about, I want to understand epilepsy because my auntie that passed away because of epilepsy. No one could understand what was it. So from me, I said, no, I'm going to learn and understand the symptom, the causes, everything, to understand and explain. The epilepsy is not a witchcraft, it's a matter like other. So when I was doing my training in the hospital, it was a psychiatric center. When I was going to fields to try to understand what people think and how they take care of the management of epilepsy in most of hospitals, you will find that most of hospitals, they have only one drug, one pill. How can you manage epilepsy, a symptoms or a mental illness using only one drug? So it's very, it is a pity for people, you understand? So what I'm saying is, we need to teach our society about psychology first to understand, like when you see the symptoms, someone in the family is not normal as the way he was before, you have to give him like a direction, go to consult a specialist, like psychiatrist or psychologist, something like that. Because most of people, when you first symptoms, the first way to go, church, they must pray to you, for you. And you spend 1 week, 2 weeks, nothing is changing. They will come back at the hospital and they'll find maybe the person is not getting help again. So that is what, this is my contribution. And like, I have one question to ask, like as professional and you guys, what can you as say, like, to pastors and churches who are taking the role of psychologists while they are not qualified? What can you say to them? That is my question. Thanks. Are you still there, guys?
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you so much. I see that Lindelwa, I'm not sure what's going on, but that was very profound. I see somebody saying open conversation between children and parents would also assist in normalizing talking about feelings, thoughts, without any fear of being judged. That's so true. Thank you so much for that contribution. Guys, I see that now it's 7:30, and yeah, this has been so good. So I just want to give the panel just to talk about recommendations, just a quick, wrap up in recommending. So now we have this webinar. We've spoken about all of these things. What is a way forward, especially in the higher institution of learning? Recommendations. So I don't see Thabo anymore. I'm seeing Kels and Sunday. Can you guys hear me? Oh, okay, cool. So over to you, Kels. What are you suggesting? I saw another question here about.
Hi. Sorry, guys. I had technical.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Thank you so much, Franca, for your sharing your experience.
Okay, guys, I see Lindelwa is having issues. Kels, you can start just briefly about recommendations. Can you guys hear us? Hello, can you guys hear us? Guys, it looks like we're having issues.
Lucy.